All right, it looks like we've got about 8 people here. Do we want to wait just one more minute, see if we get the last 1 or 2 people?
I think we're good. If we want to get started, they can jump in. And they've got the recording. So I think we're good.
Yeah, I am recording, so this will be once I get this edited, I'll send it over to you. So yeah, today we're going to be looking at the events module, just kind of going over the method for adding and creating and managing events on your calendar once you have your website set up. This is probably one of our more, I would say, complex, but it's more of just it's got so many features built into it. You can actually make a really simple event in about a minute. But then there's so many different options and add-ons for when you're creating an event that it can get pretty, it can get a little bit in depth pretty quickly, depending on what you're going to add. So I'm going to go over how to create kind of a, one of our more common types of events with all of the bells and whistles turned on. If you have questions throughout, please just let me know. I definitely don't mind getting interrupted. That way you don't get too far off track and you lose track of a question. So I'm on the parent NIGP website right now. Everything I'm going to go over is pretty much the same for all of your chapters as well. Anything that is different, I will point out. There are 1 or 2 settings that will be different because of your status as a sub chapter to the NIGP parent site versus running it as the parent site. But most of those are similar, just slight variations. So I went ahead and I built an example event that I'm going to walk through the creation of, and then we'll go through managing that event, and we'll go through one of the more advanced options towards the end. And if we have time left over, we can do a bit of a Q&A, both about events, or if you have anything pressing unrelated, we can touch those too. So I'm going to go ahead and hop into our control panel. So this is just what the events calendar looks like. There's 2 different views when you're looking at the calendar. This is what members will see. This is our grid view for our calendar. And you'll see this is one of our events. This is the training session I set up. I put it on tomorrow just because it's easier to look at an event when it's technically in the future. There is an optional view called list view up here in the upper left. And it will give people a just one on top of the other. If there were more events in the calendar, you would just see them listed like this in more of a list view. So that's something you can just switch back and forth between by clicking on this option. So members can kind of control the way that they like to see the calendar, either in a grid, like a paper calendar, or in a list. When you're going to do event administration, adding an event or changing global settings for your event, you always access those through the control panel. So if we click on the upper right hand up here and click on control panel, events are found in the website tab of the control panel. And they're under website modules because it's one of the modules that both admins and users have access to. And we'll see right here on events, just clicking on this will take us into our event manager view. And right here, if we hit search without filling anything in, we'll get a list of all of our current active events on the site. And the one we're going to be poking at today is this training session option right here. I'm going to point a few things before we get into that. We have options on the right-hand side over here. Outside of our search box. The search box is just how you kind of narrow down the events you're looking for when you hit search to look at all of your organization's events. And you'll see this is kind of similar to the list view, but with a few more bells and whistles because we're looking at this on the admin side. Outside of the search box over here on the right, we have event reports. If we click on this one, this is going to be reports that look at all events, not a specific event. I will show you when we're messing around with the training session event over here, how to run a report for one specific event. Doing this will run reports globally. Same with this export. It's going to give you roughly the same information, but in a CSV file. So if you're wanting to like pull it into an Excel file and look at all of your information that way and filter it down, you would run an event export. This configure option right here gives us all of our different tools for configuring the module globally, not just one specific event. So you've got this option for event defaults. Everything in event defaults is also going to show up in our individual training session over here. What we are seeing in event defaults, it lets you essentially come in here and configure an event, and anything we set here will be the default setting whenever we create a new event. So this page is kind of cumbersome. It's easier to come in here and set up your settings once you know how to configure an event. So what we're going to do is look through the rest of these options. So we've got mass event archive. This is if you want to remove a lot of events. So if you have, 100 events over time and you want to clear this search out, you can archive events. It won't delete the information from them. It'll just store them so that they don't show up. And then if you wanted to find archived events, you would just go over to this event status dropdown in our search. And one of the options here is archived. We've got mass event delete. This is an alternate. It's the same thing, but instead of archiving, this would remove that event and all related information. I heavily recommend against using that unless it's absolutely necessary, because archiving event is almost always a better option, because then if you need to come back and find that data, it's still there. Whereas if you do a delete, once it's gone, it's gone. Event categories, you'll notice when we were looking at the calendar earlier, we were seeing my event is in blue with white text. That is because it belongs to a certain event category. You can categorize your events and have them show up in different colors. And there's a legend for that when you're looking at the grid, so that people can have an easier time distinguishing what events they're looking for. So you'll see this is the event categories on the NIGP global site. And I set that meeting up as a membership meeting. And that's why it is blue with white text. If we chose a different category, it would show up under a different color on the calendar itself. You also have the option to set up quick events. Most organizations don't use this quick events option. This is allowing your membership to post events on the calendar. Most people don't do that. That would give your members a limited capacity to add their own events. They don't have quite all the bells and whistles as a full event, but quick events are an option to do that. If you wanted to allow that, you can edit a category. And you simply just give it a name, text color, background color, and then there's this checkbox for enable member quick events. That would let your members create a quick event on the calendar under that category. Again, most people don't do that. It's just an option that we have. Normally, you just say no to that. The next thing under our configure option over here is registrant types. You can ignore that. That is a hangover from an old system setting. We have to keep it on the menu because there are still people that use this old tool. But since you're all coming on to ClubExpress kind of fresh, you can just ignore this, because now registrant types are set up individually under each event, where it used to be a global setting. This gives you a little bit more fine detail control from event to event. Event questions is something we're going to go over a little bit later today. This is where you can come in and configure reusable questions for events. So things like, do you have any dietary restrictions? Are you a vegetarian? How are you arriving at the event? You can create those questions. And once you create that question, you can reuse it over and over. So you don't have to retype out that entire question and all of the potential answers every time you create an event. So it's nice to be able to reuse those once you set them up. Locations, same thing. You can come in here and preset locations. So if you have like a restaurant that you frequent with your organization, or if your organization has some sort of clubhouse or a physical location like an office or a mailing location, you can preset that location in here. And then it's an option when we're configuring our events, is just a drop down instead of having to retype the address every single time. Email reminders. This is our configuration for where we can come in and edit the way our email reminders look. So we've got 3 different types of emails we send. We've got an email reminder to members, and I'll go over how to turn these on once we're actually configuring the event. But this email reminder to members, this is what goes out to all of your members if you choose to send this email saying, hey, we have an event coming up, but you haven't registered yet. Would you like to attend? Similarly, there's an event reminder to registrants. It's the same thing, except for instead of saying, would you like to attend, it's saying, you have already registered. Make sure you don't forget to come and show up to our event. And then the third one here is the waitlist slot option. This is the notification that goes out to your members saying, hey, you're on the waitlist for a limited capacity event, and there is now availability. Click this link to register for the event. And that's another option we'll go over once we're configuring the event. This is where we can go to edit what those emails say. So anytime you see a pencil in ClubExpress, that means edit. And we can come in here and we'll see, here's one of our standard system emails, a message from, and then anytime you see these little squiggles, club name, it's going to auto fill that information in for you. Same with the event title, it's going to fill in the title of the event. But if we wanted to say, instead of a gentle reminder, this is a, harsh reminder, or whatever you wanted to say. And if we save that, you'll see now it's been customized with that word. And we can come in here and you'll say it'll still say that. And then if we wanted to reset it to the default, we can always click this little trash can. And now my customizations have been removed from that email and it's back to saying gentle reminder. And you can do that with all of these emails. So you can always come in here and say, I don't like the way ClubExpress worded those emails. I can, kind of edit it a little bit to have my own organization's flair to it. So that is our event reminders. And then we already went over event defaults. It's essentially just an event configuration and it presets the way your events look whenever you're looking at them. An easier way to get a grasp on that is actually to go in and configure an event. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go look at our training session here, and you'll see along this search option, we have a few icons over on the right-hand side. We have a pencil to go edit the configuration of it. We have a clipboard to copy. Our clipboard almost always means copy. Whenever you see that in ClubExpress, that would create an exact copy of this event, but on a different date. So if you are having an event that occurs multiple times, say, a monthly meeting, you can create that event once and then copy it a few times. And in fact, our copy tool has the option to make multiple copies. And we can say, this is a monthly event and I want it to, I want to copy it 5 times, and it'll create 5 copies the first day of every month. Or you can even say the first, Tuesday of every month or the second Tuesday of every month for 5 months, and it'll create 5 copies of that event on those dates automatically. So that way you don't have to go in and create this event over and over and over. And then finally, trash can. This trash can might look different depending on what status your event is in. If no one has registered for an event, you will see this trash can option, because if you delete it, it says, no one's registered, so no one really needs to get notified. There are no event cancellations. Once people register for an event, the system thinks, okay, there might be payments for that event. There might be any sort of thing tied to that event. And instead of deleting the event, you will archive the event. So archiving the event, like we talked about earlier with that mass archive option, instead of deleting it, just kind of hides it. That way it drops off the calendar. No one can see it, but if you need to come back to it, you can still go and access that information. And then there's this option right here, this button, it just resets event. If you ever have some sort of bug or a hang up or something, or someone's having an issue with their registration, sometimes clicking reset event can sometimes clear that up. Shouldn't need to use that button, but if for some reason you run into a snafu and things are taking a long time loading, or someone's having trouble registering, that can clear out like pending stuff stuck on that event. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my pencil, and we're going to go walk through the registration that I set up for our training session. So when I first create an event, the first page we're going to see when I create an event is this basic information page. We get all of these options here. And right now we're just going to focus inside this kind of square right here. All of these options up here we'll go over later, and all of these tabs on the left-hand side we will also go over. Right now we're focusing on just the body section here. When you first create your event, it's going to ask what type of event is it? Is it a single activity or a multiple activity? 99 times out of 100, you're looking at a single activity event. Multi-activity events are usually for larger, more complex events like conferences where you're having panels that people can register for, or different activities within one larger event. A single activity event is an event where you just sign up for the event, you show up, and it's done. You can add things like questions and, hey, select a meal. Multi-activity events are more leaning towards things like, like I said, conferences where you have multiple things you can register for within an event. And the most important part of that is you can charge people. If you're having a paid conference of some sort, you can have different prices tied to different activities. So if you're having someone pay for 3 different meals, they can pay a different price for each of those. Whereas with a single activity event, it's just one price per event. Obviously, title, the name of the event, short description. This is the short description that will show up on the list view option. You don't always have to fill in short description. There is a larger description where you can put in images and blurbs about people who might be speaking at a certain event, and we'll get to that in a second. Short description is just, things like if I was doing a short description for today, I would say, training on the events module for event ad or, NIGP admins. Just a short little blurb about what the event is taking place. For category, this is those category options we looked at earlier. There's all of the options we had. If I was to change this, it would show up under a different color on the calendar, and it would filter differently if people are looking for certain categories. I would go ahead and leave this as a membership meeting. We have visibility options. So who does this show up on the calendar for? Right now I have set to visible to everyone. So that means if a member goes to the website, or if someone who is not a member and they're currently just visiting your website as the public, they will still see this event. You can say this event might be visible to members only, which means it won't show up on the calendar for the public. You can also do things like visible to everyone, where non-members that visit your website can see it, but if they click on it, they'll get told that they have to log in or join in order to get more information about the event. You can do visible to committees. So if you have committees set up on your website, you can say, this is a board meeting, so I only want the board of directors to see this showing up on the calendar, and your members won't see it on the calendar. It'll be completely invisible to them, so they won't even know it's taking place. The last option is not visible. This just means it will not show up on the calendar. You can still access it through that event manager page we were looking at, but it's not going to show up on the actual calendar itself. But I'll go ahead and switch this back to visible to everyone. You'll notice when I choose the visible option, I get this date visible tool. You don't have to fill this in, but you can choose to say, I want this to go active on this day. And so the morning of the 10th, this would pop up on the calendar, but before that, it would not be visible on the calendar until that date. List view, that's that list view we were looking at earlier. There's a view button on the list view to see more details. You can change what that view button says. You can have it say view or more details or anything you want that button to say. You can manually type in and change the text on the button. The default is just view. Event contact prompt. This is what your event contacts are called. We're going to be touching on event contacts in just a minute here. Those are the people running your event, and you can call them different things. Some people like to call them, event chairs or something of that sort, but ClubExpress by default calls them event contacts. And then we also obviously have the start and finish date and time of the event. How long is this event taking place? Is it a one-day event? If so, you can leave this finish date blank and it'll autofill the date for that same day. If it's a multi-day event, you can have it span a number of days, say from the 7th to the 24th. It's a big, long event. And you can also choose to set a start time and a finish time. You always have to have a start time, but similar to the finish time, you can leave the finish blank if you want to, and have it kind of be like an opened timed event if you don't know how long it's going to run. If you have an event that's running longer than just one day, it's going to show up on each day of the calendar for this. In the list view, it'll only show up once, but in the actual grid view of the calendar, it's going to show up once on the 7th, 8th, 9th, and so forth every single day until the 24th. If you don't want it to show up every single day, there is this checkbox option right here that says show only start and end date. If you check this, it'll only show up on the calendar for the 7th and the 24th. Obviously, that only applies to events that run multiple days. And then we have these checkboxes down here. All of these checkboxes right here change how things work for the registration. So this event repeats on multiple and or non-consecutive dates. This will add an option within the event to say this event is going to show up on different days of the calendar. This is not multiple events. This means this same event takes place on multiple days. The example I like to use for this, because some people have a hard time getting the difference between multiple events and one event taking place on multiple days. So my wife registered for a sign language class, and it took place every Monday for 5 weeks. So that is a non-consecutive multi-day event, but she only had to register once. So it'll show up on multiple days, but no matter what, when you click on it, it'll take you to the same event. Whereas if we use that copy function I showed you earlier, each event, each day that it takes place will have its own registration. So I would register for one, and then the second, and then the third separately. Do not show on next day of calendar. If you have an event that is going past midnight, so let's say if this event started at 6 p.m. and it ran till 7 a.m., Because this is before this time, the event will think that it is running past midnight. So this will actually show up on the 7th, and it'll show up on the calendar on the 8th as well, because it's going past midnight from 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. If we choose this option, do not show on next day if it runs past midnight, it would not show it on the 8th. If we uncheck this, it would show it on both the 7th and the 8th because it goes past midnight. So if you're having like a New Year's party or something of that sort that's going overnight, it might show up overnight like that. And then we get all of these options down here. Specify what additional information is needed for this event. This is the page where we choose what configuration items I need for my event. You'll notice I checked just about all of them. Because I wanted to go over all of the different types of configuration for an event. And if you're keen-eyed, you might notice what's checked over here shows up over here. So these options, if I was to uncheck event contacts and save, oh, I have to say date visible. Oops, sorry, that's my bad. I chose an invalid option and I broke my event. Of course, I always do this whenever I'm training people. Give me just 1 second to get back to it. There we go. So let's go take out our event contacts. Oh. Now proceed, start time. Oh, because I changed it to off time. Sometimes I move too fast for my own good. Okay, so that's what I was trying to do. You'll notice the event contacts option is now gone because I unchecked it on the basic information page. And if I recheck this event contacts option, it reappears. So once I've saved that basic information page, all of the options I check here are going to show up. And this is where I can go down the list and configure all of my options. On the formatted description page, this is where I can make kind of like a shiny version of the page that has things like images and information. So this is very similar to the site editor. So if you are editing a custom page, like we talked about last week, this is where we can come in and we can insert images, or not, I said last week, last time we were having a session. This is where we can insert images and put information in detail about our event. So we can say, you know, we're having an event host, Greg's hosting it, and I can put all of that text information I want, and I can get as much information in here as I like. I can actually use these cells over here to break the content up. That's the same way we use the cells on that page builder. So last time we had a training session, we talked about the different rows and cells, and I can put in different size rows over here and then use these to put content inside of them. So I can put, you know, text inside of one, or I can use these icons up here to insert all sorts of different things. Like I can put links in with this little globe link icon and say, I want to link to, you know, our, you know, a certain custom page we made for this event. And I can link to just about anything. I can insert buttons. I can insert images with this icon right here. And these are just by hitting show files. This is all the images on my website that are preloaded. If I have an image on my computer that I want to upload, instead of using one of the ones that's already on our site, I can click on this upload new file option and pull an image from my computer. But I'll just go ahead and, you know, use this image right here. And I can even, you know, center that image within the cell that we chose. And now if I save this option, you know, there's all of my, you know, gobbledygook text that I added. There's my images, and that's just going to show up on the event when people visit my event page. And I'll show you what the event page actually looks like in a moment. Below this kind of like free form section, wherever you can put in anything you want, you have a few options down here. Display event description. You can choose to either display this section of content at the top of the event, which is what I normally do, or I can display it at the bottom of the event below the detail information. I like it at the top, and I'll show you why in a minute. We also have our event rules, and I just typed in, you know, pets are not allowed at this event. It's any rules you have for your event. It'll show up under event rules if you put that text in here. Yes.
Sorry, We, on the home pages for all of the chapter sites, there's going to be an event feed, basically with the date and then a short description of the event. Does that pull from that formatted description field? And if so, do we need to limit the amount of text there so that, you know, we want multiple events to scroll through in that feed on the homepage?
So no, the information that shows up on that part of the site is under basic information. What shows up there is the short description.
Perfect.
So the formatted description won't show up on the home pages in that upcoming events widget. It'll only show the short description, which does limit you. It does give you the option to put up to 2,000 characters. I think it does automatically cut you off anyway. So it's not going to take over your whole homepage if you write a few paragraphs here. It'll give you the first, few hundred characters and then cut you off. I did just get a pop-up. I think my Zoom account might be silly. It said it was going to end the meeting in 10 minutes. If it does that, I will rehost the meeting. So just be aware. If we get bumped out, I'll figure out why and then rehost the meeting moments later. Okay, we were talking about the formatted description. The last option on formatted description is this share button. So if you send a link to someone over like Facebook Messenger, or put a link on Facebook, or put a link on Twitter or something like that, this is an image selector you can use, and this is the image that will get used in that link. So you'll know, like, a lot of times if you put a link on Facebook, it'll grab an image from whatever site you link to share, and this will just tell whatever social media site you are using to share a link, hey, use this image as our link option. And I'll go ahead and at this point, I'm going to bump back out, and this back to event option will take you to the event registration page to show you what members will see. And so you'll see, here's that formatted description I made. It's not beautiful because I was just adding a bunch of random stuff, but you can see that I can add whatever I want in this blank space. And because I said show it at the top of the event, this is where it shows up. And then here's all of my registration information that I filled in. This is the ClubExpress standard information that we show based on how you configure your event. If I chose to show details at the bottom, it would show up down here below all of this information. And then as far as the event rules we filled in, those are going to show up right here. Where did I go? Oh yeah, there's my rules. Pets are not allowed at this event. So from our event landing page, you can always click show admin options, and it will take us back into our editing of the event. And the next thing we're going to look at is the next one down the list, event contacts. This is who is running this event. So if I click on the pencil for event contacts, this is the edit page for those. And this is just a simple member selector where we can go in and select a member and say, this person is in charge of running this event. Once we select someone, we can give them a title. So I can say Ronnie is the event coordinator for this event. And then we have this checkbox for admin rights. If the person you're choosing is not an administrator, checking this box will give them administrative control over the event so they can get to this screen as well. So if someone is running an event, you can let them be kind of a miniature administrator over just that event, where they can go in and they can do things like add registrations and run reports and check attendance without being an administrator for the entire site. Alternatively, if you have someone that's, say, running catering and you want to list them as an event contact so people can get in contact, I went ahead and listed our friendly Michael as the event catering contact. I can uncheck this and say, hey, there's no reason for Michael to be an administrator just for catering, but I do want to list Michael's email here. And this is where I can come in and say what contact information I want to list for this contact. I can say, anyone can, the members can email Michael and his information will show up to ask questions about catering, but I'm not going to show the phone. I'm not going to let people call Michael. Or maybe we do and say, if you want to call the catering and get in contact with, hey, make sure you're not serving peanuts because someone has an allergy, you can leave the phone number on there as well. Same with mobile phone. And then we have two options down here. You can always have one primary contact. I went ahead and set our event coordinator as the primary contact. That just means, oh, sorry, primary contact right there. That just means they're listed first on the list of contacts. And then notify on registration, any contact you check this box for, anytime someone registers for the event, they're going to get a little email saying, hey, these people registered for the event. And they'll get that email, they won't get an email every single time someone registers. If 10 people register in an hour, they'll get an email saying, hey, these 10 people registered. And then every once in a while, they'll get an updated list of people that have registered for that event. So that just notifies them of how many people are coming, useful maybe for catering to keep an eye on how many people are attending the event. So that is event contacts. Location, pretty simple. This is just a physical location for an event. You can put in an address, you can put in city, state, zip, the name of the place you're going. There is an option to show a map link. If you check this box, there will be a little Google Maps link on the event itself that people can click on, and it'll just take them to Google Maps and navigate to whatever address you put in here. You can also put in a phone or a location website. So I just linked to Google for this, but you can do, I think we touched on the build a link tool last time we were having a training. This is that same tool. It's just whatever link you want to build. If you're having an event at a restaurant, you can use the option external page, plug in the address of that restaurant or hotel or wherever you need to link to, and then fill in, I typed in venue website, and I chose button to make it look like that. And then you can choose, is this happening in the same window, meaning they're leaving that page? Or is it happening in a new window, meaning clicking that link opens a new tab? So that's what I chose, and I just typed in Google. So now if I click on that, it opens Google. But I named it venue website. And then we do have a new video conferencing option. So this is where you can do things like plug in a Zoom link if you're having a virtual event, or if you're having a hybrid event and it's happening both physical and virtual, you can do that as well. Or you can choose this virtual only, and all of this physical location goes away, and it's just the video conferencing. And then you can control when someone sees that link. If you show on event, that means you don't have to register to get that information. Or if you do after registration, that means people won't get the Zoom link until they register for the event. And once they do, it'll both show up on the event and they'll get an email with this information as well. These next two options here are probably the more complex tools. I know we've already gone over a lot of kind of in-depth stuff. These next two options right here, registration and fees and who can register, this controls who is attending your event and if there is a charge for attending that event. So right off the bat, under the registration and fees option, we have registration. We have a few options. You can say registration is required or not required, meaning you don't sign up on the website for that event. This is just informational, how to get to the event, but you don't actually have to register. If you want online registration, you would want to choose one of the required or required by close date options. There's also an option for temporarily unavailable if you're going to open up registration later, or closed if you're no longer accepting registrations. There is also an option if you're partnering with another organization, or if you're using something like Eventbrite, but you want to link to it on your ClubExpress page, you can choose external and you can plug in a link there. And when someone clicks to register, it'll take them to that link. I usually do required by close date, and this lets me set a close date for registration as well as an open date, meaning people might see this event early, but they're not able to start registering until this date and this time. And then on this date and this time, the registration will no longer be available. The event will still show up, but they will no longer be able to register once that time expires. Registrant list visibility. This is who can see who else is registered. I normally do this option, which is registered members only. A lot of our organizations like to do this option because they don't want people to wait for someone else to register before they register. Oh, have my friends registered for an event? Yes, no. This way, once they register and they are already registered, they can look and see who else is coming. The register button, like the view button before, this is what the button says when they click to attend this event. You can change that to like register here or click here or register now with exclamation points. It just lets you make your own button. Avoid duplicate registrations. This is something, if it's an in-person event where you have a limited capacity, always choose this option because this will stop people from signing up for your event multiple times. If you choose no, then any member. So where was I talking about registration? There we go. Avoid duplicate registrations. Is that where I left off? I think. Yeah. So what you can do with the avoid duplicate registrations, if you say no, that means any member can register multiple times for an event. If it's just a simple like ticketing tool you're using and you want to let people sign up more than once to get multiple tickets, you can do that. Most times I say just set it to avoid duplicate registrations by default because that's just a safer way to do it, especially if you have a limited capacity. Capacity right here, this is where you set how many individual people are able to attend your event. If you set a capacity, it will automatically turn on this waitlist option. You do have the option to show the capacity and also show available slots. I usually say it's smart to show capacity. And then at the same time, I usually say it's smart to not show slots because a lot of times if you show slots, you'll be slow to get those first registrants. Because if someone says, oh, 100 people can come, but no one's registered yet, no one ever wants to be the first. So what I say is leave this set to no. And then if you only have like 5 or 6 slots left, then maybe set it to yes to get people urgent about filling up the event because they don't want to miss out. So that's something you can always come in here and change. Waitlist, if your capacity is limited, the waitlist option will be available to you. That means when the event fills up, instead of just saying, it's full, too bad, people can add themselves to a waitlist. And when they're on the waitlist, they can get emails whenever someone cancels and frees up a slot for them to attend that event. You can choose to either manually email people from the waitlist or automatically, meaning whenever someone cancels, it automatically sends an email to waitlist people saying, hey, there's this many slots open, have at it. If you say manually, then there's a section on the event called waitlist right here, where you can click on it and say, I want to send a waitlist email to this person or this person if you wanted to make sure that people get it in order that they joined the waitlist. And then waitlist hours, the way the waitlist works is if someone cancels and you send that waitlist email out or it's automatically sent out, they have this much time to register for it before the next person gets that email and that link no longer works for them. If you set that to 0, then that link doesn't expire. They just have as long as they want to click on the link in that email and become a fill in that spot. Fees and payments. This is where we say, are you charging for it? Yes, no. You can say no fee, it's a free event, or yes, I'm charging a fee. You can choose different payment options. You can say payment. Most people do payment in full in advance only and just leave it at that. Or some people will do pay in full at event only, meaning the website won't take any payments, but it lets them know that there is a charge at the event. And then it's up to the administrators of the organization to fill in that payment after the fact. That puts more pressure on the administrators to keep up with the money. Most people like to just take payment on the website if they can. There is an option to do payment schedule. This is usually for our bigger clubs that do like ski clubs and stuff, where they have like $5,000 ski events and they can pay, month by month and pay like portions of it. That's something we have a separate video on how to do it properly. Takes some time to explain. I'll just glaze over that for now. Immediate payment required. This means that if someone registers for the event, they have 30 minutes to pay. If they don't pay within that 30-minute window, it will cancel their registration. If you say immediate payment required, no, then once they register, they're registered for the event and they incur that charge and they're taking up a seat, but it doesn't force them to pay immediately. They can choose to wait and pay for that registration down the road. Does the fee change at a certain date? You can have late fees. So you can say, hey, on the 7th, the price for this event goes up. And I'll show you how to list those prices in just a second. Or if you say no, then there's no late fee. Track attendance. This is track attendance. This lets you keep track of who has attended your event. There is not a way for members to say I attended. It has to be done by either an event admin or a full administrator. And it's just a simple checkbox. It shows you everyone that's registered. And then the administrator can go down the list and check people as they show up. And then once you run reports later about attendance, it'll show, hey, these 40 people registered, these 37 attended, and these 3 people didn't show up. Maximum guests. This is something that some people get confused about. This is not how many people can attend your event. If I am attending your event, this is how many additional people I can bring. So because I set it to two, I can attend the event, and then I can bring 2 additional friends with me as a part of my registration. If you set this to 0, then no one can attend. Only the person registering can bring themselves. It doesn't allow people to bring additional people. Non-member settings. This is where you can say what information you want to collect from non-members that are attending your event. So if you're allowing non-members to register themselves, this is what information you collect from them. And then if people are bringing non-member guests, this is what information you collect from them. This is kind of the default configuration I do for it. This is what I have seen most people have success with. If you go to the email option right here, I always set show and require for non-members that are registering themselves, because it's really good to have some way to get in contact with them in order for them to attend the event. You'll see there's another option called show. And for phone number, I allow them to enter that information, but I don't set it as required. If it's required, then they can't register without filling that information in. And then there's also this do not show option, meaning they don't even get a chance to fill that information in. You can configure this however you like. The reason I don't do show and require for guests is because I already have the email of whoever is registering, the primary registrant. I don't necessarily need to be able to get in contact with each guest. And this way, if someone is registering a guest and they don't know their email, it doesn't stop them from finishing their registration. The next page, who can register, this is where we set up who is allowed to attend this event. And it's also where we set up how much it costs. So we can set different prices based on different stipulations. So I've already pre-configured this because I didn't want to have to step through it and spend a bunch of time. But what I did, you get this list here of all these different types of people that can register for your event. You've got everyone, meaning everyone gets the same price and anyone can register. You've got non-member, meaning a non-member can sign themselves up. User of a selected mailing list category. If you're taking advantage of our mailing list categories, you can say, if you're in this category, you can register for an event. Not many people use that option. Then there's this non-member guest, another non-member. What that means is this is how much it costs for a non-member to bring another non-member. Active members, that's your membership signing themselves up. Members of a selected type, you can actually say, members pay this price, but administrators pay a different price. You can also, yeah.
Sorry, Devin. This is Tim. I'm with the Rocky Mountain chapter of RMGPA, and I think I had a question before we moved on to this module, and then Shirley had one even before I raised my hand.
Yeah.
That she put in the chat, and I was hoping.
Email list of event attendees to participating vendors. Yes, not from within the module. So for emailing a list of attendees to vendors, what you would do is under this button right up here, reports. When you click on that, this is all of the reports tied to this event. And you can go down here to event registrants, and that'll be a report of each individual signed up for the event. And when you run it, it'll give you a PDF or a Word document. It actually gives you different formats you can run it in. You can get a spreadsheet or a PDF or a Word document. And then once you have that, you can email it to them. There's not a send list to function built into the event, but you can export a list and then send it to them manually. And then was there another question?
Yeah, Devin, and this might be in a different area as well, but I thought it might be in the basic info or the registration and fees, but this would be in relation to if we were setting up an educational or professional development event. Mm-hmm. And this would be in regards to credit hours for attendance and maybe certificates of attendance for members that show that they attended something if they had professional certifications that they needed to track.
Yeah. So there's, as far as built-in modules that do that, we do have what's called the continuing education module. And if you have that module where it tracks like their like credit hours under registration and fees, I don't think that module is turned on at the moment. So it's not going to show up here. If you have the continuing education module turned on, there is a section, it'll show up right in this area, and it'll say attendance credit. And you can say this is worth, 5 credits, 4 credits, 20, however you're tracking that. And then it'll automatically, anyone that registers, they'll get those tied to their account just for registering.
And then if whoever's managing the events, when they track attendance and say, yeah, they did attend, then they'd be able to have access to that information. Is that?
Yeah, it does. It is based on attendance too. Yeah. So they have to be marked as attended before they get those credits.
Great. And we do have that as part of this. It's just not activated as a button right now.
Yes, I don't think that module. That module isn't turned on for the NIGP main site yet. So that's why it's not showing up. If that module was turned on here, then that button would be showing up.
Okay.
So as soon as you turn on continuing education and you say track attendance, that option populates right below here.
Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, that's kind of where I thought it might be in this module. That's why I asked.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how you tie that in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Back to who can register. So again, finishing down this list, these are all of the different breakouts you can do for people registering for an event to stipulate prices and availability. Members of a selected type, members of a selected committee. So again, if you're doing like a board meeting, you can select a specific committee, and only people that from that committee would be able to register. It wouldn't be available to anyone else, or maybe it's just cheaper for people of that committee, however you want to configure it. And then similarly to the guest option up here, if members are allowed to bring guests, you would want to turn on this member guest option. And there's 3 different types. There's members bringing a non-member, there's members bringing another member, and there's members bringing a person in their membership. I don't think NIGP has sub-members, so this one doesn't really apply to you guys. But if you wanted to allow members to sign up another member as a part of their registration, that would be that option right there. This is kind of a standard thing that I've seen a lot, this setup right here, where you've got the availability for members, the availability for non-members, and you'll see under fee, I've said, members get it for half price for $10. Non-members get it for $20, and that's what it looks like when you fill in these prices. And then you'll notice late fee, it's not an additive fee, it's a different price. So if the late fee is $5, you wouldn't do $5, or else that would be a $15 discount. You would do $25, and on the late fee, it goes from $20 to $25. And that's just the pricing for who can attend the event. For visibility, pretty much always leave it as everyone. If you set it to admin coordinators, that means only admins and coordinators can register people under that registrant type. So it would no longer be available. Even if I say, any non-member can register, if I set it to admins and coordinators, they wouldn't have access to it anymore. You have to leave it as everyone in order for it to be available to them. For questions, this is something I brought up earlier where we can add questions. There's 2 different types of event questions. We have registration questions and registrant questions. Registrant is each individual. So that's why I put dietary restrictions here. This is like, each person, if only one of the people attending is, allergic to peanuts or something of that sort, I need to ask that question each time. So if I'm bringing three guests, I would get asked this question 4 times, once for me, and then once for each of my 3 guests. And then for registration questions, this question only gets asked once, no matter how many people I'm bringing to the event. So if I'm bringing myself and 3 people, I only get asked this question once. So I did like arrival method. How are you and your party getting to the event? I don't need to ask that each time. I'm just going to ask it just once. If we want to add questions, this always pulls from the list of predefined questions. So if we go over to, I think I saved that tab over here, event questions. So we configure those back on our events manager page under configure. Here are our event questions. And so you'll see I've added two different questions here, arrival method and dietary restrictions. And whenever you edit one of these questions, this is the screen you get when you add one. And so you get a question name. What type of question is it? So this is my question for dietary restrictions. What type of question is it? So I did a checkbox list where people can check off multiple options. But we have all sorts of different types of questions you can ask. You can ask on a scale of 1 to 10. You can just have them enter a short amount of text. You can give them long text where they can fill in like an essay, like 4,000 characters up to. You can ask different types of dates. There's even, if you do formatted text, you can get as specific with it, like asking for answer format. You can do things like you have to fill in a US zip code or an email address or a URL, and it will tell them it's not a valid response unless it meets that format. There's all sorts of different types of questions here. But for this question, I made it as a checkbox list. I said, please select any and all dietary restrictions. And then below here, I get this item list. And then here's all the dietary restrictions that they might be part of. And whatever I put in here for each line will be a checkbox list for the question. And they can say, yes, I'm vegetarian and I'm also gluten intolerant. And they can choose multiple options because I said minimum selections, but there's no maximum. So they can check off any and all that apply to them. And then I also gave them the option to allow other. So you don't have to type other in here. If you choose this allow other option, other will show up below here. And if they check that option, it'll give them a text field to fill in their other response. You can allow them to leave comments. I usually don't, just because maybe I would do like a separate question with long text to let them leave their own notes. Because if you allow comments, the information can get kind of out of hand really quickly. If a lot of people leave a lot of comments, the reports can look kind of jumbled. And then allowing emailings. This means you can use the response in here to send emails. So you can say, I want to send an email to everyone that said they were vegan to let them know that, we'll have, like a butternut squash soup that will be vegan. And then alternatively, for this arrival method question, I used radio button. And a radio button is a one selection. So you'll notice there's no minimum maximum, but there is still a list, and it gives them the ability to select one. But if they select a different one, it deselects the previous one. And I'll show you what these questions look like in just a second. And then I get those same options: allow other, yes, and it'll give them the other option to type things in. And then this is what the question looks like. So if I have a question name, arrival method, but this is what the question looks like to the member. How is your group arriving? And then you've got these formatting tools for, making certain text a different font if you want, or anything of that sort, right up in there. Once you've configured those questions back on our page, once you hit add question, that list of questions will show up here under the select box. It's important to note, you can only use each question once per event. So you can't ask the same question twice. Or else, the event reports wouldn't make any sense. So if you have to ask, arrival method for each person, then you'd have to create multiple different arrival method options. And so that's how you set up event questions so that when they register, they'll get asked that question. Emails, we went over the system emails that get sent out to people when they register. This is where we say if we want to send them or not. So we get two sections here. One is email confirmation. This is information that we want to add that will be included only in the email confirmation. So once you register, you get this information, but you don't get it until you register. So things like, where the parking is located. Maybe you don't want to tell everyone right on the front of the event, but it gets sent to them in an email once they register. And then here's our automated email reminders. These are emails that go out to people on certain dates, depending on whether they have or have not registered. So the first option here is automatically send an email to all registrants. And you get these checkbox options. You can say, I want to send on this date and this date, 2 different emails that say, hey, you registered for this event, don't forget to come. And that would send those emails we looked at earlier. And then we also have this option to send reminder emails to all members. So if they haven't registered, they get told, hey, you haven't registered yet, maybe think about going onto the website and registering for this event. And we can also choose the dates for those to go out. Because you're a chaptered organization, you get a drop down here and you can say, this is a chapter event. I only want to send it to, this subgroup, or maybe I want to send it to everyone, and it would go out. If you are one of the subgroups instead of the parent, you won't have this option. It'll just say send it to all members. You don't have the option to send it to everyone in NIGP. You only have the option to send it to your chapter. And then our policy page here, this is where we can say if people are allowed to cancel for the event. An administrator can always go up here to registrations and manually cancel someone that has registered. If you say cancellations are allowed, yes, the member can go to the event and cancel themselves. If you say no, again, admins can always cancel people, but if you say yes, the member can cancel their own registration. If they pay for a registration, that money goes back to them in the form of a credit on the website that they can then use for anything else on the website. You know, they can call it a donation, they can put it towards their next membership renewal, they can put it towards another event if they want, anything. If you have a cancellation fee, it would reduce that credit by that much. So if we say there's a $5 cancellation fee and they paid $10 to register, they would only get $5 back because there's a $5 fee for doing so. Cancellation policy, this means they have to sign off when they cancel on something. And you can type in and say, hey, there is a cancellation policy where it says use default. In those event defaults we were looking at earlier, you can pre-fill this and then just use that default over and over, or you can manually type in a cancellation policy for your event. Same with release agreement. This is them saying, I agree, in order to attend this event, I have to agree to this information. So you can say, there's 3 options here instead of just the 2. You can say yes, including admins, meaning when an admin signs someone else up, they can agree to that release agreement for the member. Or if you say yes, excluding admins, if an admin signs someone else up for them, they do not sign the release agreement for that person. That person still has to go in and sign off on the release agreement manually. Or no, there's no release agreement. If there is a release agreement, you have the option for quick release, meaning there's a tool when you visit the website on your phone where an admin can click quick release and it'll let people sign off on it in person on a phone with their finger, kind of like, you know, when you are at the grocery store and you sign on those little sign off tools. And then similar to above, there's a use default or no, manually create a custom agreement, and you can give it a name. So I just did NIGP event release agreement. I will not break any rules, but you can type this out as long as you want to. You know, if you're having an in-person event and you need to say, you know, hey, wear a mask, or hey, we're riding bikes or something, you're signing off and releasing us from liability for attending this event. You can put in things that they have to sign off and say, yes, I agree to it. Then they show up on reports saying, yes, they agreed to the release agreement rules, that you can then print off later and say, hey, look, you did sign this paper. So that's it for configuring the event. Managing the event, once you've created it, you'll see all of these options up here across the top. There's our quick release button where you can come in and say, print all of the quick releases and see all of their signatures. This is the cancel event button. This is going to cancel, not only cancel the event, but cancel everyone's registration. So if they have paid for the event, they would get that money back automatically because you canceled the event. This is a little notes tool for keeping notes on the event. No one else sees this but people who are admins. So if you have like information that you need to keep a note on about the event occurring, you can leave those notes here, and then anyone else who's an administrator for the event can see those notes as well. Emailings, once an email goes out from the event, you can go review it here and see who has and has not opened that email. Exports and reports, we talked about those earlier. This is just all of the different types of reports you can run for it. There's all sorts of different like name tag printouts you can do. You can pull event registrations. You can look at event attendees. Register. I always lose the attendees in here. There's an event attendees report which will show you who has and has not attended. Same with exports, but it's going to give you all of the data. So if you do registration data, it's going to give you all of the information about everyone that registered in a big bulk CSV Excel export. Marking attendance, if you are either on your phone or on your computer at the event, you can come in here, and this is where you say, I'm going to mark attendance for a registered member. And if I check this box, I'll get a little check boxes for everyone that registered, and I can just check off and say that they attended. You do have the option to register and mark attendance at the same time. So if someone shows up to the event, but they hadn't registered ahead of time, and you need to register them and mark their attendance simultaneously, clicking on this will give you a list of everyone in your organization that hasn't registered. So you can see, Ronnie hasn't registered yet. I can check this and hit save, and Ronnie will be marked as both registered and attended to the event. And then lastly, there's an unmark. If you accidentally mark someone as having attended, you can come in here and it'll show you just like this option above. It'll give you checkboxes list where you can check off and say, I need to remove their registration from this event. Waitlist. This is where you can come in. Once you have people added to your wait list, you can click on them and manually send them an email saying, hey, we've got an opening. Note that email won't even be an option here if there isn't an opening. Even though you're an administrator, the site will not let you send them a notice telling them they can register unless there is a slot available. And then registrations, this is where we can see a list of everyone that has registered, or we can even come in here and say, I'm going to manually add a registration to this event, and it'll take us through that registration process. And then back up to registrations. There is also an option for deleting unpaid registrations. So if you're coming up on your event and it's full, but there's like 3 or 4 people that haven't paid yet, you can come in here and click delete unpaid registrations. They'll get an email saying, hey, your registration has been canceled because you haven't paid yet. If you would still like to attend this event, go log in, register, and pay. That's just a way of clearing up unpaid registrations if it looks like people are not going to pay and you need to clear up room for people who might actually register and pay for an event. And then our button back up here, back to the event, takes us to the main page of the event. Here is our quick release button. So this quick release button right here is only going to show up if you're an administrator. Members won't see that. Members also won't see the mark attendance button. What members will see is the register now button and the add to my calendar button. If they click add to calendar, it'll add it to whatever calendar file they have on the device they're using. So I have Outlook. And so if I click on this, it's going to add it to my Outlook. But if I was on my phone, it would add it to my iCalendar. If you have it like an Android device, it'll add it to Google Calendar. Whatever calendar you have installed, clicking this will just download a file and add it to your calendar. And then here's our register button. I'm just going to quickly walk through what registration looks like. So because we're logged in as an administrator, we have the option to sign someone else up. This would be pre-selected and would not show up for members. Members are always signing up themselves. So I'm going to pretend like I'm signing myself up. They get the option to say who's attending. Is it just bringing myself? Am I bringing a guest? So I'll go ahead and say I'm going to bring one guest. Or if it's an option, you can say I'm not coming, but I'm going to register one other person for this event if that's an option for them. So I'm going to say me and one other person. So right here, I say my registration. I'm a member, so I get member ticket price. My guest is not a member, so they are paying the full non-member price. And the system already knows my information, so it doesn't ask me because I'm logged in, but it does say, here are those options for guests. First name, I'll just say test. And then email, because I said show, they show up. Because I didn't say require, they don't get these red dots. Whenever you see a red dot like this, that means you have to enter this information in order to continue. I don't have to enter an email and phone for my guest because I didn't set those to required. And now here's where I get those questions. How is your group arriving at the event? We are arriving via public transit. And there's that radio button I created. And then here are my registrant questions. Please select any dietary restrictions. And you'll see it shows up twice because I set it as a registrant question and there's 2 of us. So for me, I'm SA here. I can say, I don't have any dietary restrictions, but my friend that I'm bringing is vegan and gluten-free and halal. And I can also show you what the other option looks like. I can say he also doesn't like garlic. And so we can go and say next. There's my sign off saying, I will not break any rules. I agree. And then that gives me a little summary of my event registration. And then it tells me in big red letters here, warning, once you click complete registration button, the event registration must be paid within 30 minutes or you will be canceled. And that's because I have that option that says immediate payment required. And once again, if I complete my registration, it's going to pop up and say, This transaction must be paid online within 30 minutes or it will expire. So then I would have to either enter my credit card and pay for it within the next 30 minutes. If I don't do so, it will cancel my registration. And even if I leave this page and I say, okay, I want to go to the home page, I still get this pop-up that says you owe a payment. And I get this big red dollar sign up here saying there is still a payment due. So I can click on that and always get taken back to the payment page. So there is a way for them to get back to the payment page and submit their payment. If they don't do that, then it's going to cancel their registration after 30 minutes.
Devin?
Yeah.
On the question where you are asking how they're getting there, can questions like that trigger an additional question to say, or an additional information thing to say, okay, since you're driving, note there is a $20 parking fee at the hotel or whatever?
No.
Okay.
Not built in. What you could do in that situation is you can, under event questions for arrival method, you could say allow in emailings and say yes.
Okay.
And then before your event, you can go in and send an emailing. And one of the distribution options will be event question. You can choose arrival method and say everyone that answered driving and send an email to them saying, hey, I noticed there's, a $20 parking.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right. We'll do a quick, I know I went over, but we got cut off in the middle. So if we do a quick Q&A, are there any questions or anything I can review real quick before we call it a day?
I did have a quick question.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned giving them a site credit if they were to cancel their registration.
Mm-hmm.
Are they also able to receive a refund, or is that only if the event is canceled?
So the way refunds work on ClubExpress are kind of interesting. If you have the built-in ClubExpress payment processor, then there is a way to process refunds.
Okay.
It does have to be manually done by the administrator. So the way refunds work, once they pay that money, it technically goes to ClubExpress and then we send it to you. In order to refund it, you actually have to send it back to us and then we refund it to their card. You'll find that information in the money section of the control panel under open credits.
Okay.
And so anyone who has any sort of open credit, be it from an event or a membership payment that was canceled, any sort of open credit is going to show up here. And if it was paid by a credit card, there's an option to refund it back to their credit card. That is only an option if you're using the ClubExpress payment processor. If you're using like Stripe or PayPal or something else, they have that money and they actually have to be the ones to credit it back. It's still possible. You just have to reach out to them and have them credit it back to the credit card and then cancel that credit here. So it's just one extra step in order to do it that way.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, if anyone has any event related questions after this, I know I just threw a bunch of information at you. I'll send the recording in the next couple days here. And then if you have questions about something we went over, feel free to email me. My email is Devin, DEVIN @clubexpress.com. You can also always call or email support. They're just support@clubexpress.com. And their phone number is on clubexpress.com as well. If you go to support, there are their phone numbers. So let me know if you have any questions or reach out to support. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a great day.